The Dominion of Stars had conquered 412 species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Their war machines were perfect. Their strategies were flawless. Their generals had studied warfare for 10,000 years, and they had never lost a single campaign. Every battle was calculated in advance. Every victory was assured before the first shot was fired. The Dominion did not hope to win. They knew they would win. Mathematics told them so. Admiral Vexthorin stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment, and watched the blue planet grow larger on his viewing screens. His 4 arms were folded behind his back, and his scaled face showed no emotion. This would be conquest number 413. The humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They were children playing in the darkness of space. They would fall like all the others had fallen. The Admiral had read the intelligence reports about humanity. They were a strange species. They had fought among themselves for their entire history, killing billions of their own kind in wars that seemed to have no logical purpose. They were divided into hundreds of nations and cultures. They could not even agree on a single form of government. By any reasonable standard, they should have destroyed themselves long ago. But they had survived, and now they had reached for the stars. "Begin the standard opening protocol," Vexthorin ordered, his voice calm and measured. His communications officer sent the message that the Dominion had sent to every species they had ever conquered. It was simple and direct. Surrender your worlds, submit to Dominion rule, and your people will be allowed to live as servants of the Empire. Resist, and your civilization will be erased from existence. No exceptions. No negotiations. The human response came back within the hour. "Thanks for the offer," the message said, "but we're going to have to pass. Good luck with whatever you're trying to do out there." Admiral Vexthorin blinked his 6 eyes. He read the message again, certain that his translation software had made an error. But the translation was correct. He had never received such a casual rejection before. Most species begged for mercy when they received the Dominion's ultimatum. Some tried to negotiate better terms. A few sent defiant threats that were promptly answered with the destruction of their capitals. But no one had ever just declined, like they were turning down an invitation to a social gathering. "They do not understand the situation," his tactical officer, Commander Zerix, said. "They are too primitive to comprehend what they face. Perhaps we should send a demonstration of our power." "That will not be necessary," Vexthorin said, though he felt a small flicker of uncertainty that he did not like. "They will understand when they see our fleet. Deploy the first wave. Standard formation. Standard tactics. We will teach them to understand their place in the galaxy." 3,000 warships moved toward Earth. Each one was a kilometer long and bristling with weapons. Each one carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Each one was crewed by soldiers who had trained since birth for nothing but war. The fleet moved in perfect formation, a geometric pattern that had been optimized over thousands of years. Every ship knew exactly where to be. Every crew knew exactly what to do. The humans had 147 ships to defend their homeworld. Their largest vessel was only 300 meters long. Their weapons were primitive by Dominion standards. Their shields were weak. Their engines were slow. The battle should have lasted 6 minutes. The Dominion's battle computers had calculated every possible scenario using data from 412 previous conquests. They had accounted for every weapon the humans possessed, every ship configuration they could deploy, every defensive position they could take. The computers gave humanity a 0.03% chance of survival. The battle would be quick, efficient, and decisive. The battle lasted 3 hours. It started going wrong almost immediately. The Dominion fleet moved into their standard attack formation, a perfect geometric pattern that concentrated firepower while minimizing exposure to enemy weapons. This formation had crushed every enemy they had ever faced. It was mathematically optimal. The humans did not attack the formation. They ignored the 3,000 warships entirely and flew around them to attack the supply ships at the back. "This is irregular," Commander Xerix reported, confusion evident in his voice. "No species has ever ignored the main battle fleet to attack supply vessels. It makes no tactical sense." "Because it is foolish," Vexthorin agreed, though he felt that flicker of uncertainty grow stronger. "The supply ships are not important in a short battle. The engagement will be over long before we need resupply. Destroying them accomplishes nothing." But the humans were not trying to win a short battle. They were trying to make the battle long. The human ships were small and fast. They darted through gaps in the Dominion formation like fish swimming through coral. They fired quick, precise strikes at the supply vessels and then vanished before the Dominion gunners could target them. When Dominion warships tried to pursue them, they led the warships away from the main formation, creating chaos. Without supplies, the Dominion's energy weapons began to run low on power after 2 hours of sustained fire. Without supplies, damaged ships could not be repaired during combat. Without supplies, the wounded could not be treated, and crew efficiency began to decline. And the humans just kept hitting those supply ships, darting in and out of the formation like angry insects that refused to die. "Adjust formation to protect the supply vessels," Vexthorin ordered. He did not like giving this order. It meant changing the optimal attack formation. It meant admitting that the humans had found a weakness. The fleet adjusted. It took 4 minutes to complete the new formation because Dominion ships always moved in precise, coordinated patterns. Every ship had to calculate its new position. Every ship had to coordinate with its neighbors. The movement was beautiful in its precision, but it was slow. During those 4 minutes, the humans destroyed 12 more supply ships. "Formation complete," Commander Xerix reported. "Good, now destroy them all." The Dominion fleet opened fire with everything they had. Thousands of weapons discharged simultaneously, filling space with deadly energy. Their weapons were precise. Their targeting was perfect. They hit exactly where they aimed, every single time. But the human ships were not where they aimed. The humans did not fly in patterns. They did not maintain formation. They moved randomly, erratically, unpredictably. They flew their ships in ways that should have been impossible, ways that put too much stress on their hulls, ways that no sane pilot would ever attempt. One human ship flew so close to a Dominion cruiser that it scraped along the hull before spinning away. Another human ship used a destroyed asteroid as a shield, pushing it forward while firing from behind. "They are insane," Commander Xerix said, his voice filled with something that might have been awe or terror. "Their pilots are literally insane. No battle computer could predict those movements because no rational being would make them. They are flying by instinct alone." "Then predict them manually," Vexthorin ordered, knowing even as he spoke that it was a useless command. "Admiral, we have not used manual targeting in 3,000 years. Our weapon systems are designed to interface with computers. Our gunners do not know how to aim manually. They have never needed to." This was the first moment when Admiral Vexthorin felt something he had never felt before in his 200 years of military service. He felt uncertain about the outcome of a battle. He felt like he was fighting something he did not understand. The humans lost 60 ships in the first hour. The Dominion lost 400. This ratio was impossible. This should not be happening. The Dominion ships were bigger, stronger, and better armed. A single Dominion cruiser should have been able to destroy 10 human ships, but the humans kept finding weaknesses in the Dominion defenses. They kept exploiting gaps in the formations. They kept doing things that the battle computers said were impossible. One human ship, badly damaged and trailing fire, flew directly into the hangar bay of a Dominion cruiser. The pilot must have known he was going to die. The pilot must have seen the defense turrets tracking his ship. But he kept flying, weaving through the defensive fire until he crashed into the hangar bay and exploded. The resulting fire destroyed both vessels. The battle computers had not predicted this. because no rational being would sacrifice themselves so wastefully for such a small gain. Another human ship used its own damaged engine as a weapon. When the engine began to overload, the crew ejected the reactor into the middle of a Dominion formation instead of fleeing to safety. The explosion destroyed 3 Dominion ships and damaged 5 more. The human ship was left stranded and defenseless, but the crew did not seem to care. They fired their remaining weapons until another human ship could rescue them. The computers had not predicted this, because it required choosing to destroy your own ship's ability to escape. A group of human ships flew into the debris field of destroyed vessels and used the wreckage as cover and weapons. They pushed chunks of metal into the path of Dominion missiles. They hid behind the hulks of dead ships and attacked from unexpected angles. They turned the destruction the Dominion had caused into a weapon against the Dominion. The computers had not predicted this because it was too random, too chaotic, too messy. "Admiral," Commander Xerix said, his voice shaking in a way that Vexthorin had never heard before. "I do not understand what they are doing. Their tactics make no sense. They are not following any known pattern of warfare. They are not following any pattern at all." "They are improvising," Vexthorin said slowly. He had heard of this concept in ancient history texts. Some primitive species did it before they were civilized, before they learned proper tactics, before they understood that war was a science with correct answers and optimal strategies. They are making decisions in the moment without planning. They are inventing new tactics as they fight. But how can they win without planning? How can they coordinate without a central strategy? Vexthorin did not answer. He was watching a human ship do something that his computer said was impossible. The ship was damaged, its main weapons were destroyed, and it was surrounded by 5 Dominion cruisers. There was no escape. By all logic, the pilot should surrender or die fighting. Instead, the pilot flew his ship between 2 of the cruisers so closely that their automated targeting systems locked onto each other. The cruisers were programmed to fire on any enemy in their sights. When the human ship passed between them, they saw each other as targets. They fired simultaneously and destroyed each other. The human ship escaped through the explosion, damaged but alive. "That," Vexthorin said quietly, "is how they can win without planning. They see opportunities that our computers cannot calculate because our computers only calculate what is rational." After 3 hours, the Dominion fleet retreated. They had lost 800 ships. The humans had lost 93. The mathematics made no sense. The tactics made no sense. Nothing made sense. Admiral Vexthorin sent his report to the Dominion High Command. He told them everything that had happened. He told them that the humans did not fight like any other species the Dominion had ever encountered. He told them that human tactics could not be predicted because humans did not use tactics in any meaningful sense. They used chaos. They used improvisation. They used insanity. The High Command did not believe him. They had conquered 412 species over 10,000 years. They knew exactly how wars were won. They had perfected the art of conquest. They decided that Admiral Vexthorin had simply been incompetent, and they sent a larger fleet to finish the job. The second fleet was 10 times the size of the first, 30,000 ships, including 12 planet crackers that could shatter worlds with a single concentrated burst of energy. General Crixvith commanded this fleet, and he was the most decorated officer in the Dominion's entire history. He had personally led the conquest of 63 species. He had never made a mistake. He had never failed. "I have studied the recordings from the first battle in detail," he told his assembled officers as the fleet prepared to depart. "I have analyzed every engagement, every maneuver, every moment. The humans won because Admiral Vexthorin was unprepared for irregular tactics. I am not unprepared. I have developed counter-strategies for every possible human action." His tactical computers held 4 million different battle scenarios. Every trick the humans had used in the first battle had been analyzed and countered. Every possible new trick had been anticipated. Every weakness in Dominion tactics had been identified and corrected. General Crixvith was certain that he had thought of everything. He had not thought of what happened next. As his fleet approached Earth, sensors detected human ships moving to intercept, but there were only 200 of them. The rest of the human fleet was gone. "Where are their other ships?" Crixvith demanded. Intelligence reported they had rebuilt to over 300 vessels. "Unknown," his tactical officer replied after checking the sensors multiple times. "They are not in Earth orbit. They are not on the planet. They are not hiding behind the moon or in the planetary shadow. They have simply vanished." General Crixvith felt his first moment of concern, though he did not let it show on his face. Ships did not simply vanish. Ships went somewhere. Ships did something. And if the human ships were somewhere doing something, they were planning something unexpected. "Scan the entire system," he ordered. "Find them." The scans found nothing. The human ships had completely disappeared. "It does not matter," Crixvith said, forcing confidence into his voice for the benefit of his crew. 200 ships cannot defeat 30,000. Whatever they are planning, it will not be enough. Begin the attack. His fleet moved forward in perfect formation. The 200 human ships moved to meet them. They were vastly outnumbered, vastly outgunned, and facing certain destruction. They attacked anyway. This time, the Dominion was prepared for human tricks. When human ships tried to hit the supply vessels, Crixvith had already positioned a defensive screen of 500 ships around them. When human ships tried to fly erratically, Dominion gunners used wide dispersal weapons that did not need precise targeting. When human ships tried to use debris as cover, Dominion ships simply vaporized the debris fields with sustained fire. After 1 hour, the humans had lost 150 ships. The Dominion had lost only 50. General Crixvith allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The first battle had been a fluke. The humans had gotten lucky. This battle would prove that the Dominion was still the supreme power in the galaxy. Then the sensors detected something strange. "General," the tactical officer said, his voice suddenly tense. "I am reading new contacts, many new contacts, extremely large contacts. Human reinforcements, their hidden fleet." "No, sir. Asteroids. Thousands of asteroids. They are coming from the asteroid belt beyond the fourth planet, and they are moving toward the fleet at extremely high velocity." Crixvith stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The asteroids were enormous. Some were kilometers across. They were moving far too fast to be natural objects following orbital paths. Someone had accelerated them. Someone had aimed them. Someone had turned rocks into weapons. "The human fleet," he said slowly, understanding dawning. "The missing ships, they went to the asteroid belt. They spent weeks pushing the asteroids toward us. They timed the attack so the asteroids would arrive during the battle. Sir, we have approximately 4 hours before the first asteroids reach the fleet. We need to move immediately. Moving the fleet will break formation. It will take hours to re-establish optimal positioning. The remaining human ships will exploit the chaos. Sir, if we do not move, the asteroids will destroy the entire fleet. There are too many of them to intercept. Some will get through." General Crixvith faced an impossible choice. His battle computers had not anticipated this scenario because it was insane. No species had ever used asteroids as weapons in a space battle. The energy required to move them was enormous. The precision required to aim them at a moving target was incredible. The planning required to time the arrival perfectly was beyond calculation. And the humans had done it with a fleet of small ships that should not have had the power or the equipment for such a task. "How did they do this?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Unknown, sir. Our analysis suggests they improvised. They used their ship's engines as pushers, burning out multiple drives in the process. They used explosive charges to adjust trajectories. They calculated the timing by hand because their computers could not handle the variables. They used nothing but basic physics, simple mathematics, and raw determination. Basic physics, simple mathematics, and raw determination. The Dominion had spent 10,000 years developing advanced weapons and sophisticated strategies. The humans had spent a few weeks learning how to push rocks really, really hard. And the rocks were winning. "Retreat," General Cricksvith ordered, the word tasting like ash in his mouth. "All ships retreat, maximum speed, get clear of the asteroid field." The Dominion fleet turned and fled. The remaining human ships did not pursue. They did not need to. They had already won. As the Dominion fleet retreated, the asteroids continued on their paths. Some of them struck the space where the fleet had been, passing through empty void. But the message was clear. The humans had turned the entire solar system into a weapon. There was nowhere safe. General Cricksvith sent his report to the High Command. He told them everything that had happened. He told them that the humans had done the impossible. He recommended immediate termination of the war. The High Command finally began to listen. The Dominion High Command held an emergency session. In 10,000 years of galactic dominance, they had never held an emergency session. They had never needed to. Their wars were always predictable, always manageable, always won according to schedule. The Dominion did not have emergencies. They had schedules. But now they had a problem. "Two fleets," the Supreme Commander said, his ancient voice heavy with disbelief. "We have lost 2 fleets to a species that has only known space travel for 50 years. We have lost nearly 4,000 ships. We have lost hundreds of thousands of trained soldiers. Explain this to me. Make me understand how this is possible." Admiral Vexthorin and General Cricksvith stood before the council, their heads bowed in shame. Around them, the council members sat in their crystal chairs, their faces showing emotions that ranged from confusion to anger to fear. "They do not fight correctly," Vexthorin said, repeating what he had said in his reports. "They do not follow the rules of warfare. They do not use proper tactics or strategy. They make decisions in the moment based on circumstances we cannot predict." "They throw rocks," Cricksvith added bitterly. "They throw rocks at warships. They pushed asteroids at us like children throwing stones. And it worked because we never expected anyone to be foolish enough to try it." The council members looked at each other. They did not understand. For 10,000 years, they had perfected the art of war. They had developed the most advanced ships, the most powerful weapons, the most sophisticated strategies. Every battle was calculated in advance. Every outcome was determined by mathematics. And now a primitive species was defeating them by not following the rules that everyone else in the galaxy followed. "Perhaps," one council member suggested carefully, "we should try to understand how humans think. Perhaps we should study their history, their culture, their psychology. If we understand them, we can predict them." The council agreed. They assigned their best analysts to study humanity. They gathered every piece of information they could find about human history, human culture, human behavior. They studied human wars, human inventions, human art, and human society. It took 3 months to complete the comprehensive study. When the analysts presented their findings, the council was more confused than ever. "Humans have been at war with each other for their entire recorded history," the lead analyst reported. "They have fought thousands of wars among themselves, millions of battles. They have killed billions of their own kind in conflicts that seem to have no logical purpose or resolution." "This is known," the Supreme Commander said impatiently. "Many primitive species fight among themselves before they are unified by conquest or civilization. It is a normal stage of development." "Yes, but humans are different," the analyst said, his voice becoming animated despite himself. "Every time they fought a war, they invented new ways to fight. They never fought the same way twice. When one side developed a new weapon, the other side developed a counterweapon. When one side developed a new tactic, the other side developed a counter-tactic. They have been innovating warfare continuously for over 10,000 years of recorded history. The Council was silent. The Dominion had been perfecting warfare for 10,000 years, refining the same tactics until they were mathematically optimal. The humans had been changing warfare for 10,000 years, constantly inventing new approaches and abandoning old ones. It was not the same thing at all. Furthermore, the analyst continued, warming to his subject, humans possess a psychological trait that we have not encountered in any other species we have studied. They call it creativity. It is the ability to imagine things that do not exist and then make them real. It is the ability to look at a problem that cannot be solved and invent a solution that no one has ever thought of before. All species have some capacity for creativity, a council member objected. We ourselves create new technologies and new art. Not like this. Human creativity is fundamentally unlimited. They do not accept that anything is truly impossible. They look at problems that cannot be solved by any known method, and they invent new methods. They look at rules that cannot be broken without catastrophic consequences, and they break them anyway. They look at situations that cannot be survived by any rational calculation, and they survive them through sheer determination. The analyst displayed images from human history. Humans building boats to cross oceans that should have drowned them. Humans building machines to fly when all calculations said heavier-than-air flight was impossible. Humans building rockets to leave their own planet when they had barely discovered electricity a century before. Humans curing diseases that had killed millions. Humans splitting the atom. Humans walking on their own moon. Each accomplishment had seemed utterly impossible, until humans made it possible through nothing but creativity and determination. The humans have a saying, the analyst concluded. They say, where there is a will, there is a way. We have translated this as accurately as we can. It means that humans genuinely believe that sufficient determination can overcome any obstacle at all, no matter how insurmountable it appears. And based on our observations, the analyst added quietly, they appear to be correct. The Supreme Commander was quiet for a long time. He was very old, even by Dominion standards. He had ruled for 300 years. He had seen the conquest of dozens of species. He had never seen anything like this. What do you recommend? He finally asked. We recommend immediate negotiation, peace, trade, cultural exchange. We cannot defeat the humans in conventional warfare because they will always find a new way to fight that we have not anticipated. Every strategy we develop, they will counter. Every weapon we deploy, they will adapt to. The only way to defeat humans is to not fight them at all. We are the Dominion of Stars, a council member said angrily. We have never negotiated with inferior species. We have never accepted equals. We conquer or we destroy. Then we will be destroyed, the analyst said simply. Not today, perhaps not for many years, but eventually the humans will find a way. They will improvise, they will create, and they will win. The council debated for 3 standard days. Some members wanted to continue the war. They wanted to send 100 fleets, 1,000 fleets, however many it took to crush the humans through sheer numbers. But the analysts showed them projection after projection. The humans would keep improvising. The humans would keep adapting. The humans would keep finding new ways to fight. And the Dominion would keep losing ships, keep losing soldiers, keep losing wars. In the end, the Council voted to send a diplomatic envoy to Earth. Ambassador Yextala was the finest diplomat in the Dominion. She had negotiated the surrender of 50 species. She had convinced proud empires to bow before the Dominion's might with nothing but words. She had talked warrior races into putting down their weapons. She was confident that she could convince the humans to accept reasonable terms. She landed on Earth on a spring day. The sky was blue, the air was warm, and strange plants called flowers were blooming everywhere. The human representatives met her at the landing site. They were smaller than she had expected, softer. They did not look like the warriors who had destroyed 2 Dominion fleets. They looked like prey animals. But she had seen the battle recordings. She knew better than to underestimate them. "Greetings," she said, speaking through her translation device. "I am Ambassador Yexdala of the Dominion of Stars. I come to discuss peace between our peoples." The lead human stepped forward. He was an older male with gray hair and a lined face. He wore simple clothing, not military uniform. His name badge identified him as Secretary General Marcus Chen. "Welcome to Earth," he said with a warm smile. "We were hoping you'd come around eventually. It's much nicer to talk than to fight. Would you like some coffee? It's a drink we make from roasted beans. It has a stimulating effect. You might like it." Ambassador Yexdala did not know how to respond to this. She had expected fear, anger, or perhaps grudging respect. She had not expected hospitality. "Thank you," she said carefully. "I am here to discuss terms for ending the conflict between our peoples." Of course. Why don't we go inside where it's more comfortable? The weather is nice today, but meetings are better with proper chairs and refreshments, and I really do recommend the coffee." The negotiations were strange from the beginning. Ambassador Yexdala was accustomed to intimidating her opponents with displays of Dominion power. She was accustomed to making threats and demands. She was accustomed to watching other species grovel and beg for mercy. But the humans did not seem intimidated. They did not seem afraid. They did not grovel or beg. They just seemed friendly, relaxed, casual. It was deeply unsettling. "Here are our proposed terms," Secretary General Chen said, sliding a document across the table with that same warm smile. "Full and immediate peace, full diplomatic relations, fair trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, scientific cooperation initiatives, no war reparations, no territorial concessions, no submission to Dominion authority, just 2 civilizations working together as equals for mutual benefit." Ambassador Yexdala looked at the document. It was so reasonable that she did not know how to respond. The Dominion had never signed a treaty of equals before. They had always been the conquerors. The other species had always been the conquered. "These terms are unusual," she said slowly. "You won the battles. By the conventions of war you could demand much more. Reparations for your losses, territory, concessions." "Why would we do that?" Chen asked, sounding genuinely puzzled. "We don't want to dominate you. We don't want revenge. We just want to live in peace and trade with other species and maybe learn some of your advanced technology. You've been in space for 10,000 years. You must have developed some amazing things." "You want our technology?" "Of course, and we'd be happy to share our technology with you in return. That's how trade works. Both sides benefit." "What technology could you possibly have that the Dominion would want? You have been a spacefaring species for only 50 years. Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are crude." Secretary General Chen smiled. It was the same expression Ambassador Yexdala had seen in the battle recordings. The expression human pilots wore just before they did something impossible. "Well," he said, "we have creativity." Ambassador Yexdala returned to the Dominion with the treaty proposal. The council debated for another week, but in the end, they had no choice. They could not defeat the humans in war. They could only accept them as equals or continue losing ships until the Dominion was too weak to defend itself against other threats. The treaty was signed 3 weeks later. The Dominion of Stars and the United Nations of Earth became official allies. Trade began. Cultural exchanges began. Scientific cooperation began. And the Dominion began to learn about human creativity. They learned quickly. Within 5 years, Dominion scientists were working alongside human scientists in joint research facilities. Together, they developed new technologies that neither species could have created alone. The Dominion contributed their 10,000 years of accumulated knowledge, their precise mathematical models, their sophisticated understanding of physics and engineering. The humans contributed their creativity, their willingness to try impossible things, their ability to look at problems from angles no one had ever considered. The results were remarkable. New faster-than-light engines that cut travel times by half, new weapons that were more powerful and more precise than anything either species had previously developed, new medical technologies that could cure diseases both species had thought incurable, new materials that were stronger and lighter than anything in the Dominion's catalogs. Admiral Vexthorin, the commander who had lost the first battle against humanity, became the Dominion's ambassador to Earth. He spent his days studying humans, trying to understand how they thought, trying to learn their secrets. He never fully succeeded. Humans were too random, too chaotic, too unpredictable, but he learned to appreciate them. "You know," he said to Secretary General Chen one evening as they shared coffee in Chen's office, "in 10,000 years of warfare, the Dominion never lost a single campaign. We were perfect. Our strategies were flawless. Our execution was impeccable. We calculated every possible outcome." "And then you met us," Chen said with that human smile. "And then we met you, and you defeated us by being imperfect, by being messy, by being unpredictable. You won because you did not know how to fight properly." "We knew how to fight," Chen corrected gently. "We just didn't know how to fight your way. We fought our way instead." "Which is exactly why you won. We had spent 10,000 years preparing to fight enemies who thought like us. We had not prepared to fight enemies who thought like you. We could not predict you because you did not even predict yourselves." Chen laughed softly. "Want to know a secret?" "Yes, very much. We weren't really planning to beat you. Nobody thought we could beat the Dominion in a straight fight. We were just trying to survive, to hold out long enough for you to decide we weren't worth the trouble. We made up everything as we went along." Vexthorin stared at him. "Everything." "Everything. The asteroid attack. Some engineer came up with that idea in the middle of the first battle. She was watching the debris floating around and thought, what if we had bigger debris? Much bigger debris. She pitched the idea to her captain, who pitched it to the Admiralty, and 3 days later we had half our fleet pushing rocks in the asteroid belt. That is insane." "It worked, didn't it? The supply ship raids. A young pilot suggested them because she was bored with frontal attacks and wanted to try something different. None of our tactics were planned in advance. All of them were improvised in the moment." Admiral Vexthorin was silent for a long time. He had been defeated by accident. He had been defeated by a species that was just trying things to see what would work. "That is," he said finally, "the most terrifying thing I have ever heard in my entire life." "Really? We think it's kind of fun. Never knowing exactly what's going to happen, always having to think on our feet. It keeps life interesting." "I know you think it is fun. That is precisely what makes it so terrifying." 10 years after the war ended, the galaxy had changed in ways no one had predicted. The Dominion was no longer alone at the top of the galactic hierarchy. Humans were everywhere, spreading across the stars, trading with everyone, exploring everything. They had not conquered anyone. They did not seem interested in conquest. They simply made themselves indispensable. Need a problem solved that no one else can solve? Ask the humans. They would think of something. Need a new invention that the laws of physics say is impossible? Ask the humans. They would imagine something and then build it. Need to defeat an enemy that everyone says cannot be defeated? Ask the humans. They would improvise something completely unexpected. Other species began to notice what was happening. Some were afraid. They had heard stories about the Dominion's defeat. They knew what humans were capable of. They worried that humans would eventually turn their creativity toward conquest. But humans were not interested in conquest. They were interested in something else entirely. They were interested in making things better. Humans built hospitals on worlds that had never known advanced medicine. They built schools on worlds that had never known education. They built bridges between species that had been enemies for millennia. "Why do you do this?" a diplomat from another species asked a human ambassador. "What do you gain from helping others?" The ambassador, a young woman named Sarah Park, thought about the question for a moment. "I don't know exactly. It just seems like the right thing to do. When you see someone suffering and you can help them, you help them. And besides, it's interesting. Every world is different. Every problem is new. Every solution has to be invented. But the cost, the time, the resources, you spend so much helping others when you could be building your own power." Power to do what? Sit around being powerful. That sounds boring. Life is boring if you're not making things better, if you're not solving problems, if you're not helping people. The diplomat did not understand. Her species had spent 1,000,000 years trying to keep things exactly the same. Stability was their highest value. The idea of constantly making things better, constantly changing everything, was exhausting to contemplate. But humans were not exhausted. Humans were energized. Every problem they solved made them hungry to solve another. Every impossibility they overcame made them eager for the next impossibility. They seemed to feed on challenges. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. 20 years after the war, the Dominion's supreme commander came to Earth on a personal visit. He was very old now, ancient even by the long-lived standards of his species. He had ruled the Dominion for 300 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had witnessed technological revolutions and social upheavals. But he had never seen anything like Earth. The planet was a riot of colors and sounds and activity. Everywhere he looked, something was being built or invented or created. Massive construction projects reshaped entire continents. Research facilities pushed the boundaries of known science. Artists created works that combined human imagination with alien techniques. The humans never stopped moving, never stopped creating, never stopped trying new things. "Why did you come here?" Secretary General Chen asked. Chen was old too now. His hair was completely white and his face was deeply lined. But his eyes were still sharp, still curious, still alive. "I came to understand," the Supreme Commander said. "I have studied humans for 20 years. I have worked with humans on joint projects. I have befriended humans who served as ambassadors to my world. But I still do not understand you. I do not understand how you think." "What don't you understand?" "Everything, your chaos, your creativity, your constant need to change things. It makes no sense to me. The Dominion spent 10,000 years creating perfection. We refined our society until it was optimal. Why would anyone want to change perfection?" Chen laughed. It was a warm, friendly sound, full of genuine amusement. "Because there's no such thing as perfection," he said. "Everything can be improved, everything can be better. And even if something were somehow perfect, there's always something new to create, something new to discover, something new to try. The universe is infinite, Supreme Commander. There will never be a shortage of new things. But the uncertainty, the risk, how can you live with not knowing what comes next?" "That's the best part," Chen said, his old eyes sparkling. "Not knowing what comes next is what makes life worth living. If we knew everything that was going to happen, what would be the point? The surprise is what keeps us going. The uncertainty is what makes us feel alive." The Supreme Commander thought about this for a long time. His species had spent 10,000 years eliminating surprises. They had created a civilization where everything was predictable, everything was controlled, everything was safe. And he realized for the first time that it was boring. It had always been boring. He had just never had anything to compare it to. "I think," he said slowly, "that we were wrong. All along we were wrong about everything. We thought perfection was the goal. We thought control was the answer. We thought eliminating uncertainty was the key to happiness." He looked out the window at the busy human city, where people rushed about doing 1,000 different things, none of them planned or predicted. But you have shown us something different. You have shown us that chaos can be beautiful, that uncertainty can be exciting, that improvisation can be more powerful than any strategy." "We didn't mean to show you anything," Chen said gently. "We were just being ourselves." "I know, that is what makes it so remarkable." The Supreme Commander stood to leave. He was returning to his homeworld to live out his remaining years. He had learned what he came to learn. "One more question," he said at the door. "If you could do it all over again, the war with us, would you do anything differently?" Chen thought about it. He thought about the battles, the losses, the friends who had died, the close calls where everything hung by a thread, the moments when it seemed like humanity would be destroyed. "No," he said finally, "we wouldn't change anything, because every choice we made, every improvisation, every crazy idea that somehow worked, that's what made us who we are. If we had done things differently, we wouldn't be us anymore. And I like who we are." "You are a strange species, Marcus Chen." "We know, we like it that way." The Supreme Commander returned home and told his people what he had learned. He told them that the galaxy was changing. He told them that the old ways were ending. He told them that the future belonged to those who could adapt, who could improvise, who could embrace the beautiful chaos of existence. Some of his people were afraid. Change was terrifying when you had spent 10,000 years avoiding it. But some were excited. For the first time in 10,000 years, they found themselves wondering what was going to happen next. 50 years after the war, humanity had spread across the galaxy. They were not conquerors. They were not rulers. They were not masters. They were just humans doing what humans did best. They were everywhere, solving problems and creating new ones. They were building things that had never existed and imagining things that had never been thought of. They were making friends with species that had been enemies for millennia and turning enemies into allies with nothing but kindness and curiosity. The Dominion was still powerful, but it was no longer alone. It was part of a galactic community that included hundreds of species, all working together, all learning from each other, all growing and changing and evolving. And at the center of it all were the humans, the species that had defeated the galaxy's greatest military power by throwing rocks and making things up as they went along, the species that had turned chaos into strength and uncertainty into opportunity, the species that had shown the galaxy that there was more than one way to survive. Admiral Vexthorin, now very old, gave a speech at the 50th anniversary celebration of the peace treaty. Representatives from 100 species filled the vast auditorium. He spoke about the war, about the battles, about the lessons the Dominion had learned. "I have studied humans for 50 years, he said, his translated voice carrying across the silent crowd. "I have worked with them, lived among them, called them friends, and I have finally understood their secret." He paused, his 6 eyes scanning the audience of humans and aliens gathered before him. "It is not their technology. They borrowed most of that from us. It is not their weapons. Ours were always more powerful. It is not their numbers or their resources or even their intelligence, though they are very intelligent indeed." Another pause. The audience waited. "Their secret is simpler than any of that. Their secret is that they never give up. No matter how impossible the situation, no matter how hopeless the odds, no matter how certain their defeat appears, they keep trying. They keep improvising. They keep finding new ways. And eventually, somehow, against all logic and reason, they succeed." He smiled. It was a strange expression on his scaled face, but he had learned it from the humans. He had learned many things from the humans. "When we came to conquer Earth 50 years ago, we thought we knew everything about warfare. We thought our strategies were perfect. We thought victory was mathematically certain, but we forgot one crucial thing." He looked directly at the human delegation in the front row. "We forgot that the universe does not care about perfection. The universe does not reward mathematical certainty. The universe rewards those who adapt, those who change, those who improvise, those who refuse to accept that anything is impossible. He raised his glass in a toast. To the humans, the species that taught the entire galaxy how to improvise, may we never stop learning from them. May we never stop being surprised by them, and may we never be foolish enough to fight them again. The audience raised their glasses. Humans and aliens together. Former enemies become friends. Former conquerors become partners. All of them united in celebration of what they had built together. And somewhere in the crowd, a young human engineer named Maya was already thinking about the next impossible problem to solve. She had an idea for a new type of faster-than-light drive, one that the physics textbooks said couldn't work. Everyone told her it was impossible. She smiled to herself. Impossible just meant no one had figured it out yet. That was the thing about humans. That was who they were. They looked at impossible things and figured them out anyway. They improvised. And they always would.